So I get to kick this off here, everybody. So nice to see so many familiar faces that I haven't had the opportunity to see over the last year and a half or 18 months or whatever. I am the sponsor of the event here, so they're going to give me 5 minutes here on the front end to let you guys know what's been going on with Lexis in the last time since I've seen you, and I thought it might be helpful just to kind of show you some of the tools that we have now available out there as we get started here. So I'll do a quick intro. This is less than 5 minutes. I timed it. Believe me, it won't go long. My name is Brian Beck. I know many of you. I know many of you are clients. I am the technology rep for LexisNexis. I work with law firms in Indiana, Michigan, Southern Illinois, and I've been in many of your offices. And I basically do presentations and share with you guys the latest in legal research technology. So what have we been up to? Well, we've acquired some machine learning, artificial intelligence, and legal language analytics companies and built it into a platform that's now called Lexis Plus. It's our new platform. And it's really built on a lot of different interviews that we've done across the country on attorneys and judges. What would you guys want if we made a new platform from scratch? And it's been out about a year now. You want it easy, but you want it really sophisticated behind the scenes, kind of like your cell phone, right? I mean, it's really, really sophisticated, but it's very easy to use. So search term color coding, I'll show you a few slides on this. Ravel view, brief analysis, expert judge analysis, public records, even verdict settlement analyzer. Here's what search term maps looks like. And let's see, can you guys see? Yeah, you can see it. I got a little bar up here on the top. Prison guard extracts wrong tooth. If you want to just look for the word tooth, look for the orange bar in your search results without even having to open up a case. You're able to find the results. I mean, oftentimes you can skip through cases much more quickly than you could otherwise. So search term maps, Ravel view. This is more seminality than it is relevance. So the bigger the circle, this is the top 75 search results on a grid that shows you the bigger the circle, the more seminal the case is. So it's much easier to find case connections, things like that, citing patterns and trends across time and jurisdiction. Brief analysis. This is something as reps that we've been asking for a long time. Can we upload a brief and analyze it? Or if we're working on a brief, or if we have an old brief and we just want to update it. If we have opposing counsel's brief and we want to see maybe they were citing bad law. I can't tell you the number of times that I've been in law firms and I said, hey, we've got this brief analyzer tool. If anyone wants me to analyze a brief, oh, I just got one from the other side. They'll send it to me during the presentation. We'll load it. And there's 2 red stop signs on the other side's brief. So really powerful stuff and super, super easy to use. You just literally upload it and you get to this dashboard. So brief analysis, expert witness analysis. So protect your witness and exclude the other side. Put an expert's name in and you'll know quickly if they were admitted, excluded, and the reasons why, the judicial language that was used. So really, really easy to use, but super sophisticated in how we get there. And then judge analytics. So if you're in front of a judge and you want to know their grant and deny rates for all these the top 100 motion types, absolutely fantastic to have. And it's legal language analytics. So we go in and analyze and find out grant deny rates. If there's in this one, it says, motion for appointment. If you're doing a motion for appointment in front of Judge Alsip, it better be bulletproof because he rarely grants those. So just another way that we can kind of help you ease legal research. Public records, I would certainly be remiss if I didn't include these. This has been around for a long time. It keeps getting better. We're up to 84 billion public records. When I started 10 years ago, it was at 37 billion. So that's what Lexis has been up to. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. If you need to get in touch with me or you want to see any more in-depth detail here, I'm happy to do so. Reach out. There's my contact info. With that, I'll let you get on with your day. My pleasure to introduce the House of Delegates Chairman, Michael Jositis. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you to LexisNexis for partnering with the ISBA throughout the years. We very much appreciate your support. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Indiana State Bar Association's House of Delegates. I am Michael Jositis. It is my absolute privilege and honor to be here today and to serve as this year's chair of our House of Delegates. As you all know, COVID-19 has forced all of us to rethink how we operate, and our new annual summit is a reflection of that. For us, that means we have some delegates attending in person and some connecting virtually. If you are attending virtually and would like to speak, put a note in the chart and we will unmute you. We believe we have the technology and plan in place to manage today's meeting, but we always should expect the unexpected. We appreciate your patience as we navigate through this meeting together. With me on the dais today is Mr. Ren Berry from Indianapolis, our parliamentarian. Secretary, Ms. Renee Ortega from Hammond. And we also have the chair-elect for the House of Delegates, the Honorable Holly Harvey from Bloomington, Indiana. I would also like to recognize Justice Stephen David, who will speak later on behalf of Chief Justice Loretta Rush and lead us in a conversation about court innovation. I would further like to recognize Court of Appeals Judge Mark Bailey, who will speak later on behalf of Chief Judge Cale Bradford of the Indiana Court of Appeals. Also with us today is Court of Appeals Judge Elizabeth Tavides. And Lori Torres, who is the Chief Deputy Attorney General, who will be speaking here today on behalf of Attorney General Todd Rokita. I would also like to thank Connor Reporting for the services that you are providing for us today. There will be a verbatim transcript of everything that takes place today. Thank you. We will begin by hearing from Angela Jones of Crown Point, Indiana. She is the chair of the Committee on Credentials and Admissions. She is also the current president of the Lake County Bar Association.
Mr. Chairman, it is my pleasure to report that all members present are properly certified as delegates and a quorum is present.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Thank you, Ms. Jones. We will now hear from our Chair of Rules and Calendar, Mr. Ben Fryman of Valparaiso, who is attending virtually. If we could unmute Mr. Fryman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Hello,
Good morning,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
Good morning. Mr. Chairman,
we need to unmute you, Mr. Fryman.
Okay.
It appears we can't hear you at this moment. Just
okay.
a second. Unless this is another practical joke you're playing on me, Ben.
I am not playing a joke. This is not a joke.
We still can't hear you. Hold on for just a moment.
Sure. That's good. Everyone else can hear me.
This is the unexpected that we had talked about. Ben, it's my understanding that those that are on Zoom can hear what you're saying. It's also my understanding that you have stated, as I can read your lips, that you move that the calendar as provided be accepted as the order of the day. Please give us a nod of the head if that is correct.
That's my motion.
Thank you, Ben. We might be able to hear you at this point. Can you just at least say hello to everyone in the delegation?
Good morning.
Still can't quite hear you,
All
but
right.
I understand that you said it was a pleasure to be here and pleasure to serve.
Yes, that's exactly what I said. Thank you, Michael.
We have a second for Mr. Fryman's motion. I hear a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the calendar as the order of the day, please say aye if you are attending in person. Any opposed? Virtual delegates, please vote via the poll that now appears on your screen. No, we're just waiting for the results. Thank you. The calendar is approved. Thank you, Mr. Fryman, for your service this year. We appreciate it. We now have the privilege of hearing from one of my good friends, my fellow undergraduate and law school graduate, and truly one of the historical trailblazers in the entire history of the bar and the Bar Association. I am truly honored to be your friend, and I am truly honored to introduce the president of our association, Mr. Michael Tolbert of Gary.
Can you hear me? Okay, that's better. That's better. I want to say good morning to the court, to distinguished guests that we have here today, the distinguished dais, and all my fellow delegates. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to address you this morning. And over the past year, I've had the pleasure and the honor. God has really blessed me with the opportunity to serve as your president of the Indiana State Bar Association. And it is a privilege and an honor that I do not take for granted. I've had a lot of great moments and times that I won't go through all of them this morning because they only told me I have 5 to 10 minutes. But one of the things or a couple of the things that I want to do is go over some of the highlights of the year and give you an update of your association. So there are 3 areas that I want to go over. I want to go over membership, I want to talk about the ISBA's current finances, and I want to talk about some of the goals and accomplishments that we accomplished this year and that we met. First, with membership, I had the pleasure and the distinct honor of attending a membership meeting this morning with a great committee chaired by Amy Dudas and also spearheaded by our fearless leader, Carissa. And they're doing wonderful things for this association. For those of you who probably don't know, we're in a pandemic right now. And that has required that we rethink the way that we deliver our services to our members. It has required that we rethink how we engage our members. And the membership committee is instrumental in making sure that every aspect of our association and every member feels personally connected with the services that we provide them. So one of the things that we have accomplished and that has been done over this past year is we've created a retirement category for retired members. One of the things that you will see going forward with this association is more outreach to our affinity bars, our minority bars across the state of Indiana, because they are a wealth and a great pipeline of membership for this great association. And more importantly, we're going to customize the way membership operates, and that has been done this past year and will continue to be done into future years when we have new leadership. And the next item that I want to go over with you are the financials. I grew up in the church, and one of the things that pastors always do is they want you to know how the church is doing and how the money's going. So I will make sure that I do that and cover that. I had the pleasure in the past, a few years ago, I chaired the Budget and Finance Committee for this association. And I also served as the treasurer of this association twice. And one of the remarkable things about a bar association is sometimes it's very difficult to operate in a surplus. And I can tell you that my years as the treasurer and as the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, that was a struggle in the past. But I am happy to report to this great association that your finances are in good hands and will be in good hands into the future. We have over $3 million in cash reserves, and we have a healthy section budget and revenue that will last us for years to come. And I cannot take credit for that. All the credit goes to the great staff, to our fearless leader, Joe Skill, and all the great members of our great board of governors that govern this association and monitors each and every penny down to the cent. So I want to thank the board of governors members that are here, that are present in the House. I want to thank the staff. And I want to thank our executive director, Joe Skill, who is probably somewhere trying to figure out more ways to save us money. So thank you, Joe. The last area that I want to cover with you is kind of a hybrid. It's presidential goals and recaps of accomplishments throughout the year. Our State Bar Association took a very aggressive step in creating a strategic plan. That strategic plan included advocacy, education, equity and inclusion, and connections. You'll see the seeds of that strategic plan be planted. It has been planted this year, and you'll see all of those seeds bloom over the next few years. So I'm very excited about the strategic plan. The ISBA was honored by lawmakers for having one of the most diverse executive committees in the history of this organization. And that was, we were honored with a resolution that I'm extremely proud of. And I want to thank you distinguished delegates, and all the members of the executive committee that made that happen. I would like to thank Justice David and Anka Henshaw for the ISBA's open conversations that has received national notoriety for this organization. And it will serve as a platform for many very important, crucial talks about race relations and about equity and inclusion efforts for law firms and the legal community. So thank you. One of the things that I wanted to accomplish within the past year was to reach out to the bar associations. I started with the Lake County Bar Association up north, all the way down south to Evansville. And over the year, we were able to touch pretty much 99.9%. And I won't tell you the bar association that we were not able to touch, but we were able to touch the majority of all the bar associations in this great state and heard their concerns, heard their pleas, and heard all the great things that they had to offer us. And the more important thing that I took from that is I learned that we are a great association, but we can be better. And we can be a better partner to our local bars, and we will continue those efforts. Last but not least, the Board of Governors. I was very happy that we created a Past Presidents Committee. That Past Presidents Committee will harness the institutional knowledge of past presidents and will help us, will propel us into the future. The past presidents have really been an instrumental part of my guidance in this association. And I want other leaders to have the same opportunities that I had to work up and close with presidents that have served in the position that I'm in right now, and to offer guidance to future leaders of our association to keep us on steady footing. So in sum, I'll close with saying that the ISBA is stronger than ever, and the years look awfully bright with Clay Miller and Amy Dudas that will be at the helm. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve you. And it was a pleasure and an honor over the past year of helping this bar association continue greatness. So thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you all at the assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, President Tolbert. I'd like to invite Justice David to the podium to share his report of the Indiana Supreme Court.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone, live and virtually. I should ask permission. I know we're being recorded. Nobody told me that would happen, but is it okay to touch the podium? Because Terry Tolliver got in trouble last year. Remember that? Don't touch that. Don't come up here. Michael, what an amazing year in an unforeseeable time. And I speak for everyone, how grateful, how appreciative we are of your year as our president. You are beyond reproach. You are the epitome of all that we strive to be in every category, bar none. So thank you for your service. Mr. President, members of the House of Delegates, guests, most importantly, I look around the room and see many, many friends. I bring you greetings from the Chief Justice of the state of Indiana, Loretta Rush. Duty has prevented her from being here today. She has a conflict and cannot be here. Her scheduling conflict is my great fortune. Really, the CJ is missing this invitation to be with her friends and family? Yes. Well, that doesn't seem right. This is a big deal. It is. It's a huge deal. It's a hugely significant event. So what possibly can be the conflict? What can present or prevent the Chief Justice from being here where you believe she should be? One of her daughters is getting married. Family, good enough, right? That's the only thing that would prevent your Chief Justice from being here. But her conflict translates into disappointment for you to see me, but I'm happy to be here. So good for me, bad for you. Michael, you're the president of the State Bar Association. Mr. Clay Miller, you are the president-select of the Indiana State Bar Association. And to you, the members of the House of Delegates, live and via Zoom, you are not merely members of the House of Delegates. And to the rest of us here, we're not just spam or chopped liver. No, not at all. Each of you, each of us represents the rest of the lawyers and judges and others who make up membership in the Indiana State Bar Association, over 10,000. More important than even that, you represent the best of all of us, but even still more important, you're the guardians of our legal system in Indiana. Your influence stretches from East Chicago to Vevey, from Orland to Mount Vernon. Your membership is inclusive, diverse, sometimes adversaries of each other in the courtroom or on sides of the cases, but otherwise advocates for or on behalf of the rule of law. And you live in communities throughout the state. You attend various places of worship. You coach and cheer at athletic events. And some of you even still play, although maybe not very well. You volunteer, you serve, you are involved, not just your paying clients, but your community and thousands and thousands and thousands of pro bono hours. And that makes Scott Wiley and all of the saints like him very happy and very grateful. You represent directly and indirectly 6.8 million Hoosiers. You are, quite frankly, the present and the future of justice in this state. As you move forward, so does our state. Your best days contribute to good for all Hoosiers. When any one of us stumbles or falls or succumbs to shortcuts or frustrations, others suffer. That is both our collective burden and a tremendous opportunity for all of us. You may never fully realize the impact of what you do each day for justice, for the rule of law, for fairness and equality, not just for some, but for all. Thank you for doing your best to bring your A game every day. I'm here to report on the goings of your Indiana Supreme Court and our trial judiciary. And of course, there would not be such a robust report if it were not for the unprecedented cooperation, collaboration, mutual trust and respect and dependency that we have all established together. The bench, the bar, the Indiana State Bar Association, all of the local bars, right? It's not a zero-sum game. Everybody working together. And we must continue to cherish and nurture that relationship. We pledge to do that. We, the court, will not take you for granted, never have taken you for granted, and we will continue to work together. We have a unique partnership. All you have to do is talk to a lawyer, a judge, or an appellate judge from outside Indiana and get into a conversation such as a question. Are you and your Supreme Court doing much innovation together? Answer, I can't even count how many initiatives are going on in the state of Indiana. Or how about this? Ask one of your out-of-state friends, question. So what is about to be provided to all attorneys in your state free that your Supreme Court is working on? Answer, I'll get to that in a minute. Teaser or question. Well, that's so cool, but how much is that costing you? Answer, nothing. Or maybe one more. Hey, friend in another state, can you email a Supreme Court justice and get a response in a day or two? Or do you have their cell phone number? Answer, sure. Yeah, 317-224-4293. Really? I think that's pretty cool. You've earned it. You deserve it. And we'll move forward together. My friend and colleague, our Chief Justice, told me I could say anything I want. She did. That, my friends, is trust and respect at its finest. It's strength of character and an act of extraordinary leadership, professionalism, and confidence. So on behalf of Chief Justice Rush and my three boy buddies, Justice Massa, Justice Slaughter, and Justice Goff, thank you. And I'll give you my report in the form of bullet points. So hang on. Because I care about you, but quite frankly, Joe, I'm not too concerned about the time, but I will do my best. So hang on. Number one, we would not have survived and indeed thrived in the worst COVID times without the partnerships that we have all established, and more importantly, the relationships. You made it possible to navigate COVID, to pivot, and to react. You talked to us, at times implored us, but you always worked with us to address the issues and make the necessary changes and continue to make the necessary changes to make our justice system, our legal system, our state totally 21st century. Together, we navigated uncharted, unimaginable waters, teeming with challenges and unknowns. How many of you were at last year's House of Delegates meeting, right? The question and answer format. Revolutionary. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, leadership. Number two, last year there were 950,000 cases filed in Indiana. That number was down from 1.2 million from the years before. Certainly understandable. But every one of those cases, every one of those controversies, every one of those disputes is real, right? It's most important to everybody involved. Number three, the Indiana Supreme Court reviewed 724 cases last year. 50% were criminal, 37% were civil, 9% were attorney and judicial misconduct, and 4% were other, whatever that means. Number four, because of you and your needs and your willingness to speak up and our willingness to listen, and the fact that we respect your views, we covet your views, we want your opinions, we suspended the limit on distance education. We aren't certain what lies ahead. Greatly reduce the number of hours required in person, or let you decide what you're going to see or do live and what you're going to do virtual. Stay tuned. If you have strong feelings about what we should do as we emerge from COVID, and we are, please let us know, or let somebody know what your thoughts are and your reasoning. And I mean that, please. Number five, we've adopted the UBE. That is 21st century, but we will require all applicants to practice law who want to practice law in Indiana to complete the Indiana Law Course, which a group of Indiana lawyers, you all, are working on developing right now, that will focus on what you have told us needs to be the focus for those who are going to practice in this great state of Indiana. In a virtual format with appropriate integrity and competency protectors. We are excited about it, and you are helping us build it. Partnerships in motion. 6, disciplinary commission. 28 complaints filed last year, over 1,062 complaints, over 28 verified complaints filed, over 1,062 complaints submitted that were summarily dismissed, 70 final orders on discipline, 98 informal guidance requests. Please listen carefully. Adrienne Myring is our new executive director, and she and Justin Fortner, our chief administrative officer, and some of us have some crazy ideas to make the disciplinary commission better for you, more emphasis on education and prevention, more emphasis on advisory opinions. So get involved. When asked for your opinion, give it. Adrienne is not to be afraid of unless you are up to intentional no good or have stopped thinking. She can become your friend, colleague, and ally. Reach out to her as a bar association. She is crazy smart and she cares about each one of you. She is a straight shooter and a great listener. She will not lead you astray. Her word is her bond. Number 7. JLAP. Thank you. We're the JLAP volunteers, JLAP staff. I'm not asking for the JLAP clients to raise their hand, just volunteers and staff. Thank you. Thank you for those that serve as volunteers and help us recruit more volunteers. And thank you for asking your friends if they're okay. And after, of course, asking yourself. And remember, it's okay not to be okay if you do something about it. No one is perfect. Get help is what I'm trying to say. Help those who need help. Terry, Loretta O, and their team of staff professionals and volunteers are nothing short of extraordinary. Tell them and help them help you and your colleagues. Help us help you. Last year, we had over 73 JLAP presentations. Yoda was one of the many guests. Over 4,500 attendees at JLAP programs. We've upped the number of support groups. JLAP is all about you. Use it. Number 8, thank you for your support of the open conversations on race and racism. The State Bar Association, your State Bar Association stepped up. Your leadership stepped up. The Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, every big bar in the state of Indiana, and many more, all law schools. For every one individual or entity that gave us or has given us flack, 100 gave us hugs. Thanks to you. It's been wonderfully honest, vulnerable guests, live, unrehearsed, uncoached, real vulnerable, honest, and open. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Catherine, for making it happen. Catherine, if you're not sailing today, we thank you for your inspiration and for birthing this idea. It's been transformational for so many. We have some ideas for next year, but I digress. I cannot thank the State Bar Association enough for your support. And again, the 30+ other entities. The Bar Foundation, all law schools, Thomson Reuters, Cummins. Let me make this clear to everyone in the state of Indiana. There's plenty of room at the justice, equity, and fairness table for everyone. No one has to give up a seat. We'll pull out more chairs. We'll put out some table extenders. Everyone is welcome. And speaking of Catherine Pulley, I must say I've had the great fortune to have been a lot of really cool places and done a lot of really cool things and seen a lot of cool stuff. and had some really cool jobs, and I've met some really amazing people. Many are right in this room. But I've never known a more caring, more giving, more self-sacrificing, more loyal, more committed person in my life than Catherine Pulley. You know, she stepped away to serve in another capacity at the intersection of really important and really, really important. But her heart and soul is here every day with the State Bar Association. Relationships do matter, particularly in our profession. Maybe we could all consider being just a wee bit more fully committed this next year to our profession, our community, our state. I'm certainly going to do my best. Number 9, ISBA LDA is fantastic. Raise your hand, hoot, if you are an LDA grad. That's your best hoot? Applications are due November 1st. Help us recruit, please, please. I'm about done. Number 10, remember I mentioned coming soon? Well, you may have heard this, maybe not. And you know Mary Depry, our court director, lawyer, former trial judge. Odyssey is about to be in all 92 counties. But what I've been teasing you about, not text messages being expanded, so we reduce people not showing up, help you with your jury selection. Who knows what the future lies? But what you're about to see, free on your iPhone, your iPad, your laptop, your personal device. You get up in the morning, have your coffee in your PJs, before you go to the office, before you remote, pull up your calendar, all the cases you have in Odyssey, all throughout the state. Latest updates right there. For you, your staff, put in your little code. We're bringing that to you because you wanted it, and then we'll be able to update it. That's our gift to you. 9 million users accessed my case over 33 million times and downloaded over 14 million documents. 11, AR-14, I say again, AR-14 is being revised. You still have time to submit concerns, suggested language to Justin Fortner, who's collecting that, sharing it with the Rules Committee, who's working on the revisions. What's going to be able to be done remotely? Who's going to decide that? What are the factors? This is your opportunity. 2 bites at the apple. Send your comments now, and then send your comments after the proposed revision. So you get 2 bites. Take advantage of them. With less than 1% of the state budget, we still were able to distribute $16.4 million in grants. We'll talk, number 13, more about innovation in a few moments with Judge Tavitas and Steve Badger and our innovation guru, Dr. Think, Chief Innovation Officer, Bob Rath. Let me just jump to the end. Just last week, we convened the 21-member Commission on Equity and Access, tracking and following your lead and double down on your efforts of the State Bar Association and many other bar associations and organizations. The commission will look to provide more equal access to justice and improve public faith and confidence in our system. Deborah Daniels, Norris Cunningham, Dr. Forrest, Dr. Gina Forrest, our new Chief Diversity Officer, along with our Equity Coordinator, Princess Darnell. We will report our findings and recommendations to court no later than December 22nd, 2022. Some of you here today, thank you, are serving on that commission. We need volunteers or voluntold to serve on the many working groups. So if you're interested, email Dr. Forrest or myself. I've exhausted my allotted time, and I do not anticipate that this court will look kindly on any motion for extension of time. So I leave you with these last comments. Stand tall, be proud. You are Indiana lawyers and members of the Indiana State Bar Association. I can't compete with Mike at any level, but at least I can wear the State Bar Association tie. That's all I can do. You are members of the Indiana State Bar Association. You have incredible title. Honor it, covet it, respect it. Covet respect and integrity and strength of character. This state depends on you for leadership, service, and advocacy. Thank you for support of the rule of law. You are protectors of all that is good in the state of Indiana, and you must be the agents of change for all that needs changed. God bless each one of you. I'm in awe of each of you. On behalf of Loretta, Mark, Jeff, Chris, I say be you, be great. Thank you. That's our report.
Thank you, Justice David. Thank you, Justice David. And just a slight supplement to your report. If everyone didn't know, Justice David is the two-time LCBA golf outing champion. I'd like to also thank you for coming up to the LCBA. This time. And also avoiding my errant tee shots. At this time, I would like to invite Judge Mark Bailey to share an update from the Court of Appeals. Thank you, Judge Bailey.
Good morning. It's a tough act to follow, right? Always the case when you're on the Court of Appeals. But thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, Justice David, honored guests, fellow members of the bar, and members of the House of Delegates. Good morning. I've been a judge on the Indiana Court of Appeals since January of 1998. Currently, I'm the third in years of service behind Judge Najum and Judge Riley. You know, one day you're the new kid on the block, and the next day they're constantly asking you for a retirement date. But I digress. Chief Judge Bradford sends his regrets that he couldn't be with you today, but in his stead, he asked that I report on the state of the Indiana Court of Appeals. Some dates such as January 1st, June 6th, July 4th, September the 11th, and December 7th readily evoke thoughts of important events and turning points in our collective being. To that list, our court would add March the 11th, 2020. Prior to this date, we observed a tidal wave of COVID-19 infections boil over the world. On March the 11th, 2020, this pandemic reached our shores. And along with many other organizations, our court went into remote operation on that day and continued in this mode for several months thereafter. Like many of you, along with many of our fellow Hoosiers, we had to adapt to the circumstances. I'm pleased to report that we were prepared, and because of this, we made the necessary changes to practice and policy that have allowed us, as our numbers reflect, to remain as productive today as we were before the pandemic washed ashore. Our COOP, that is our continuity of operations plan team, which consists of our chief judge and key members of our administration, met on a weekly basis to problem solve and adapt our practices and procedures to the new reality. They, as a team, did wonderful work. And on a personal note, I must say Chief Judge Bradford did a yeoman's job in shepherding our court through these unprecedented times. Specifically, we upgraded our courtroom and two main conference rooms to support audio and video conferencing. We have made liberal use of this equipment and those capabilities. But most importantly, we are reminded that the practice of law is a human endeavor. So on behalf of our court, we want you to know how grateful we are for the vital role members of the bar, such as yourselves, played in making sure that the legal matters before our Indiana courts continue to be addressed during this pandemic. Throughout this time, you adapted to rule changes and procedure modifications almost as quickly as they were implemented. We respect and appreciate this. Ultimately, the Hoosier legal community's exemplary response to the pandemic included in no small measure your skillful and resourceful participation and assistance as advocates. But we've long since returned to our offices. From the beginning of this event, we have subscribed to the view that we are a part of government and the government works where the public can see it, interact with it, and assess it. You know better than most that the courts in Indiana have continued to conduct business, and the Indiana Court of Appeals is no exception. We do this with a robust in-office presence. Change, as we know, is the only constant in our lives. Our court embraces these changes as they occur and pauses when appropriate to celebrate that which was and that which will be. In this vein, we pause to thank and celebrate the tenure of Judge John Baker and Judge James Kirsch. Judge Baker was the court's longest serving member with more than 31 years on the court. He retired about a year ago and now serves the court as a senior judge. Judge Kirsch retired just a few weeks ago after more than 27 years on our court. Judge Kirsch joins Judge Baker as a senior judge on our court. We celebrate and welcome their successors. First, former appellate practitioner Leanna Wiseman of Dearborn County, who assumed the bench in September of 2020. And most recently, former Ice Miller partner Derek Moulter from Marion County, originally from Newton County, where he grew up. But he assumed his seat on the bench several weeks ago. I believe it was October 1st. The court's current most senior member, Judge Ed Najam, will retire in 2022. And when he reaches the mandatory age, we encourage those of you who reside in the first district to consider submitting your application for the seat that he will vacate. So with regard to the court business, the court remains very busy court, pandemic notwithstanding. There were more than 4,000 new filings last year, and we decided almost 1,900 cases by majority opinion. As you know, our decisions come by way of actual written opinions, not summary dispositions consisting of a single word such as affirmed or reversed. Every litigant receives a thorough, well-reasoned, some people might take exception to that, but nevertheless, an explanation for our legal basis in the decision that we've made. More than 6,000 motions were filed with the court, all of them processed and decided in a timely fashion by our Indiana Court of Appeals. Despite the volume, the average age of pending cases at the end of last year was even lower than the previous year. At slightly over 1 month, that's just over 1 month from the time the clerk's office transmits the case to our court to the time an opinion is handed down. We're proud of this, not only because it is one of the shortest turnaround times in the nation, but also because we are aware that every case is very important to those involved. And as the adage goes, justice delayed is justice denied. Another important aspect of our court's work involves oral arguments, whether in our courtroom, remotely, or off-site. The off-site oral arguments consist of a protocol we call appeals on wheels. In a normal year of approximately 80 oral arguments, we conduct about 45 of them as part of our appeals on wheels protocol. These typically occur at high schools, colleges, and law schools, but they've also been held at conference centers, tourist sites, and even retirement centers. We live stream every argument from our courtroom and archive them for a 24/7 viewing. We continue to record and archive all of our traveling oral arguments as well. Those of you who have attended the Appeals on Wheels oral argument know that traveling oral arguments are just like oral arguments in our State House courtroom, in that a bailiff calls the court into session, the judges enter, and the lawyers present their arguments to the judges and respond to the judges' questions. But the difference between these proceedings and our courtroom oral arguments involve the interpersonal contact. After traveling oral arguments, the judges usually entertain audience questions, of course, not about the case we just heard, but more broadly about the law and the judiciary in general. The host site often invites the judges and audiences to stay for lunch and further interaction. The whole experience is an incredible educational tool and provides us with an opportunity to connect with Hoosiers across the state in a very meaningful way. In fact, several years ago, we set a goal to conduct at least one oral argument in each of our 92 counties. I'm pleased to report that just prior to the pandemic, we accomplished this goal, and now we are hoping to repeat it. It's a great demonstration to our younger citizens that the law works. It also acquaints them with the practice of law. Young people especially need to see this, and we believe the Appeals on Wheels make sure that they do. In closing, I believe the best lawyers possess 7 qualities: good judgment, excellent communication skills, advanced analytical ability, research skills, people skills, perseverance, and creativity. The past year has presented unprecedented challenges and precipitated tremendous changes. Adapting to these changes required the deployment of all of those qualities as much by the practitioners as by the judiciary. I have no doubt that more change lies ahead. It always does, but perhaps now more than ever. We pledge to provide leadership, and we value your partnership in this endeavor, as together we meet the challenges presented by ongoing change. Thank you very much, and that's the report of the Indiana Court of Appeals.
last minute change, so I appreciate it. Mr. President, who's not at his seat right now, who I walked right in front of earlier. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Justice David, judges, members of the House of Delegates, thank you for allowing me to have a short report on the activities of the Indiana Attorney General's office. The Indiana State Bar Association has a very special role in advancing the practice of law in Indiana. And as it turns out, I have been a member of the Indiana State Bar Association for all of my 35 years of practicing law. There are 160 lawyers that practice at the Indiana Attorney General's office, and there are about 400 of us altogether. Those 160 lawyers are working every day, determined to make good on the oath and the promises that we make as we get sworn into office by the serving Attorney General. We have cases that span the gambit. We have more than 13,000 different matters that these 160 lawyers are handling. It is a weighty responsibility, one that we take on willingly, one that I hope that you might encourage your family and friends and children to undertake. So I know when I went to law school, the Attorney General's office was kind of out there. I had friends that worked there. But it is such an honorable and distinctive role to have. We actually represent state agencies. We defend state agencies. We undertake just such a broad stroke of the law that there is something there for anyone that wants to practice big law and to defend the rights of Hoosiers as well. Our starting salary for deputy attorneys general is now about $55,000. And after 10 years, a deputy attorney general can expect merit raises to be at approximately $75,000. So that is the remuneration for doing great work. Let me speak briefly about some of the work we do protecting Hoosier consumers, which is one of our main priorities. As luck would have it, Scott Barnhart, who will give the report next on the Indiana Bar Foundation, is our chief counsel for consumer protection. It turns out it is one of the primary roles that our office has. In March, our office led a settlement for $188 million across the country, of which approximately $6 million will be paid to Indiana. And Scott and his team were leaders on that settlement. Over the course of this year, our Consumer Protection Division has recovered more than $173 million for Hoosiers. We also mediate individual cases. So while we may undertake big cases like the cases we have against telecom companies, big tech, we also mediate individual cases. When you have a problem or you have a client who has a problem or you know of someone, please, and it's a consumer issue, please call our office and let us know about that. We aggregate those. And so when we find bad actors, it allows us to do something. But even if it's just one complaint, we have a whole team that works on trying to come up with a solution for both the complainant to our office and the business. We also handle robocalls. Who knew that robocalls was one of the most irritating things that we could be dealing with? And so we have an entire team that also deals with robocall, trying to get ahead of the robocallers. Yesterday, we announced an investigation and a lawsuit against StarTel Communications out of Evansville. This company allegedly acted as a gateway into the United States for robocallers in India, the Philippines, and Singapore. It is responsible for initiating or routing 4.3 million calls into the state of Indiana. Where is their world headquarters? It's in a mobile home park in Evansville. It is not legit. We're also holding those accountable for the opioid epidemic that is here. The scourge of addiction has claimed far too many lives in our Hoosier state. And so we are aggressively pursuing those that have put opioids into our systems. This includes consultants, manufacturers, distributors, and others. We have recovered $12.5 million from a consultant already this year, and we are in the midst of working through the settlement with distributors and manufacturers for another $269 million that will be paid to Indiana. We are working with the 580 political subdivisions who have signed on, and we are also hopeful that other political subdivisions will recover their funds as well. We have stayed busy defending Indiana's abortion laws from attack by abortion providers, and we have defended the right to life. We have defended the legislature's constitutional authority to meet when they call themselves into session. We have also been active in filing amicus briefs, supporting other states' legal actions where we share common interests. State attorneys general nationwide play a critical role in standing against federal overreach and defending state sovereignty. On this note, you can expect a challenge to the Biden administration's OSHA vaccine mandate when it becomes effective. Not only have we recovered money for Hoosiers through local litigation, but we also participate in multi-state litigation throughout the country. We recently recovered $1.8 million in a scheme to overcharge the Medicaid program. So far in 2021, the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit has recovered more than $8 million for Hoosiers. We're also active fighting against other kinds of fraud, including unemployment insurance fraud that has been rampant, not just through our state, but in others as well. We recently clawed back $3 million from a fraudster's bank account locally after it had been frozen, and we had been working on that for months and months. Our litigation team has recovered almost $13 million for taxpayers this year. And across all of our divisions that I've spoken about, we have recovered more than $206 million for Hoosier taxpayers. So besides the money recovered, we also reunite Hoosiers with their lost property. We have an unclaimed property division that just this year has recovered and reunited $36 million worth of stuff, not just cash, but stuff with their rightful owners. So if you have a cable deposit, a safe deposit box, any rebate check that you might have, you should check our website, unclaimed.gov, I think is what it is. IndianaUnclaimed.gov. I did have that written down. And search for your name and those in your family and see if we have any money for you. I thank you again for the work that you do on behalf of our profession and for supporting the work that our deputy attorneys general do in our office as well. And I thank you for indulging me as AG Rokita's backup quarterback this morning. That is a report from the Attorney General's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. I would now like to invite Mr. Scott Barnhart, Chair of the Indiana Bar Foundation, to share an update from our friends at the foundation. Thank you, Mr. Barnhart.
Thank you. And I'd like to first reiterate Lori's call. Having returned to the Attorney General's office after 7 years in private practice, I can attest that it is truly rewarding work. So I would encourage anybody thinking about it to reach out. On behalf of my fellow board members, the President and CEO, Chuck Dunlap, and the staff of the Indiana Bar Foundation, it is my pleasure to update the House of Delegates on the status of the Indiana Bar Foundation. Having been the chair over the last 2 years, fulfilling our mission and lending change to improve civic education and legal assistance for all Hoosiers during the past year has certainly been challenging, but it also has been rewarding. The foundation's vision could not be more clear. We spent the last year or so crafting and reevaluating what our mission is. And our mission is to be the premier statewide organization and trusted partner in advancing civic literacy and civic legal assistance in Indiana.
as a direct result of the recommendations from the Foundation's Civic Education Task Force, led by Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch, and through the unwavering support of our partners, the Foundation was instrumental in passing Indiana House Bill 1384. Because of our early committee work and statewide commissions, this will oversee the creation of middle school civic education's curriculum and expand on the existing curriculum that exists statewide. This ultimately will lead to a required semester for civics for all Hoosier middle school students, nationally recognized for their methodology and overwhelming bipartisan support for the bill. 1384 has elevated Indiana to a leader in civics education nationwide, and continuing the great work that the Bar Foundation has done in the civic education space. The strengths of the Civic Foundation education initiatives are deeply rooted in the growth and success of two programs, the We the People program and the mock trial program. And these Indiana students will be competing statewide and regional competitions, and I would highly encourage every one of you here to participate. If you have not done that, it is rewarding and you get more out of it than you put in. It is fantastic to see the kids' responses and what they've been studying and what they've been learning, and having to have discourse and discussions in a civic and a civil manner, and demonstrate to you their understanding of the Constitution and their understanding of our government. So I highly encourage you to participate in the We the People program. Also, probably very close to many of the litigators in the room, the Bar Foundation hosts the mock trial program, and we are starting that as well. The case is going to be released here later this week, and there's been a dedicated group working on the case committee to draft a case and to make sure that students understand Indiana law and understand how to participate in a trial, what roles lawyers play, what role the judges play, what role the witnesses play. I would encourage you as well, if you have not participated in the mock trial program, to do that as well. In the last 18 months, professional development supporting We the People has included 80 educators and 9,000 students across the state, 9,000 students across the state. And there'll be the demonstration of the We the People later this afternoon. And I would encourage you to watch and participate in that. The mock trial program, there have been 385 students consisting of 41 teams that have prepared across the state. We are encouraging, trying to reach the corners of the state. Evansville is an area that we are particularly interested in expanding into. Scott Wiley is in the room, I think. And having students there understand what mock trial is, and having a reach from north to south to understand what it is that we do, and encourage and develop potential lawyers moving forward. We also have a program called the United States Senate Youth Program, where we encourage high school seniors to apply. And it is comprised of 19 students. The committee advises the Indiana General Assembly on topics related to youth, submitting an annual report, and they participate in the government in a legislative capacity. Just as the foundation has earned a national reputation for its civic education programs, the growth and expansion of our civic legal assistance programs has been equally impressive. Our staff recently created and launched a pro bono opportunity guide, a convenient one-stop shop for lawyers, law students, paralegals to explore local statewide pro bono opportunities, matching availability and skills and time constraints. I ask you to help spread the word about the pro bono resource guide and tell your friends and colleagues about this information. You just need to visit their website. The opportunity is a part of the Indiana Legal Help Online portal. The portal is designed to support low-income Hoosiers and access across legal help. As the largest private funder of civil legal education assistance in Indiana, the foundation will disperse $3.5 million in grants and funds supporting civic legal assistance and pro bono throughout the state this fiscal year. That legal assistance is needed and will help fund the landlord tenant mortgage foreclosure facilities and programs and other programs throughout the state.
We're also distributing Indiana civil legal aid funds to 13 qualified organizations for the first time in a partnership with the Indiana Supreme Court. We're very proud and we're very encouraged by this program, working with the court and to do so in a very meaningful way and having impact on Hoosiers across the state. In addition to providing direct grants and funds, our staff provides technical assistance and it convenes stakeholders to strengthen Indiana's civic justice system. An example of this includes offering law school scholarships, loan repayment assistance, and other programs to facilitate legal aid. In partnership with the court, the foundation staff, and Indiana's Coalition for Court Access, the coalition's mission is to improve the availability and quality of civic legal services across the state, to open up the discussion, to address important issues. It will hold its annual meeting virtually next week on October 22nd. The keynote speaker will be the Honorable Ruth Reichard, who recently published the book, Blood and Steel, Ryan White, the AIDS Crisis, and the Deindustrialization of Kokomo, Indiana. The conference also includes breakout sessions on a variety of topics. The registration link is available. You can find it at the Bar Foundation's website, www.inbf.org. Please join us if you can. I'd also like to take a minute or two to congratulate and thank Chuck Dunlap. Chuck Dunlap has been with the Bar Foundation for 20 years. 20 years. During his leadership, it has grown an unprecedented growth and impact to the foundation in areas of civic education and civil legal assistance. From humble beginnings with just 2 staff members, the foundation now has 12 employees. And I'd like to take time to congratulate Chuck Dunlap. The foundation's growth and expansion over the last 20 years has been directly attributable to his leadership and directly attributable to his vision of what the foundation can be. And I'm encouraged by the path and the direction that the foundation is going in. While we have accomplished much, demand for legal assistance is growing. The need is there. And I encourage all of you who are leaders throughout the state, leaders in participation with the association, to also get involved in leadership roles with the foundation because the need is there. Bar associations, members of the judiciary, and the legal community are integral to the foundation's growth and the ability to serve our neighbors. Your contributions of time, your contributions of money, your contributions of generosity and scholarship are important to the foundation to impact Hoosiers in a positive way. As a report from Foundation, I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Barnhart, and thank you again, Mr. Dunlap, as well. I'm sad to report that we lost several ISBA members over the last year. I direct your attention to the honors report, which is being shown on the screen as I read their names. Dale Anderson, Lansing, Illinois. David Badger, Carmel, Indiana. Michael Bain, Indianapolis, Indiana. Dennis Becker, Fort Wayne. Joe Black, Vincennes. Peter Bomberger, Dune Acres. David Cates, Syracuse. James Clark, Indianapolis. Terry Curry, Indianapolis. Richard Green, Syracuse. David Gresham, Indianapolis. R. Todd Groff, Logansport. Thomas Hamilton, Elkhart. Robert Hess, Munster. Terry Heisten, Chesterton. Leon Kaminsky, LaPorte. Jordan Lewis, Terre Haute. John Molitor, Carmel. Robert Peterson, Rochester. John Prophet, Carmel. David Russell, Carmel. William Satterley III, Valparaiso. Larry Shadd, New Albany. Spencer Schnatter, Madison. Deborah Shook, Indianapolis. John Smithburn, South Bend. David Wiseman, Mishawaka. Charles Wicks, Elkhart. And I also encourage any in-person delegates to come to the microphone, or virtual delegates to request be unmuted in the Zoom chat to share the names of anyone we may have missed. Mr. Vinovich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin Schmidt from Chesterton, Indiana.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Gus Sakopoulos from Terre Haute, Indiana, passed away this week.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, John Slabaugh from Elkhart County. I also regret to inform of the passing of Pete Todd and David Stutzman from our county.
Mr. Chairman, Felsen Bowman of Greenwood, Indiana, passed.
Thank you. Was there anyone online that wished to speak? Please join me in a moment of silence to honor their dedication, contribution, and service to the people of Indiana. Thank you. As you may know, the court created the Innovation Task Force in 2019 with the broad purpose of improving the legal process for court users. 3 subgroups were identified for its initial focus: family law, technology, and civil litigation. Justice David will lead us through a discussion today regarding some of the ideas the task force is considering. Your input is critical to these ongoing efforts. Justice David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve, Bob. All right, and then hand me. So what we're going to do is, hello again, we're going to give you a little overview of some of the areas that many of you have been involved in assisting us in helping our profession. We're going to focus on the Innovation Task Force and some working groups or task force subcommittees of that. We're going to focus on today the Family Law Task Force led by Judge Tavitas, the Civil Task Force led by Steve Badger, our Chief Innovation Officer, Bob Rath, and I will help facilitate that conversation. We're going to go through the 2 presentations via PowerPoint, and then with the balance of time, and Mr. Chair, if you will keep us on time, and we are on time. I don't have the red. That's pretty cool. Okay, well, I'll use my trusty little watch, and then engage in a discussion and have an opportunity for you to ask questions of the subject matter experts. We'll take notes. Okay, so a little bit of exercise, and we appreciate your comments. So are you ready for liftoff? Are you ready for liftoff? I have 24 more bullet points. I can go back to that. Okay, so in September of 2019, history trivia, the Supreme Court issued an order establishing the Indiana Innovation Initiative. You can read that. There'll be an exam later this weekend. We're going to focus, first of all, on one of those, the Family Law Task Force creation. This is what the task force was created to do, and boy, have they been doing that. Judge Tavitas and her team of committed, caring lawyers and judges. So I'm going to pass this to Judge Tavitas, and I'll step out of the way.
Thank you, Justice David. Good morning, everyone. Justice David, judges, delegates, thank you for having us here today so that we can introduce to you the work of the Family Law Task Force. So the Family Law Task Force was created to analyze the research on court reform, assess the impact of innovations in other states, identify innovative strategies for significantly improving court processes, and provide a written report with findings and recommendations. We have submitted our final report that was submitted in March of this year. The Family Law Task Force was charged with considering recommendations on more efficient handling of domestic relations matters. These recommendations were based on findings and reports of the National Center for State Courts, the Institute for the Advancement of the American Legal System, the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, the Conference of Chief Justices, and the Conference of State Court Administrators. The Family Law Task Force is comprised of 17 members consisting of judges, family law practitioners, law professors, and psychologists. We have here today Leslie Dunn, the Deputy Director of the Children and Families Division of the Office of Court Services. She assisted the task force and has provided invaluable support and leadership to the task force. Bob Rath as well, and other members of the Office of Court Services have been instrumental with the task force work. The Family Justice Institute identified 13 principles of family reform, which the task force used as the foundation of our recommendations. The Family Justice Institute was established to provide courts with validated, data-informed strategies for improving the way courts process family law cases. The 13 principles are based on the assessment of domestic relations cases in state courts throughout the nation. And they are divided into 4 sections for innovation, as we see up here on the slides. The study concluded that courts must lead case management. In domestic relation cases, this requires courts to direct a problem-solving approach. Our Family Law Task Force recommends adopting case management standards. The Family Justice Institute has found that case management is essential for courts to handle family law cases efficiently and effectively. This requires courts to review the status of cases and assess their progress toward resolution according to time standards. Time standards provide greater efficiency, but also less trauma to families. The Family Law Task Force researched case management plans in other states and identified many tools to implement these timeframes. This includes case management orders, triaging of cases, and judicial oversight of cases. The National Center for State Courts recommends timeframes for resolution of family law cases. They recommend that 75% of family law cases be resolved within 120 days, 90% within 180 days, and 98% within 365 days. In addition to case management, courts should establish a flexible pathway approach to triage domestic relations cases. Triage involves an early screening and assessment of cases to determine the right pathway. The Family Law Task Force looked at triage plans for many states, including Alaska, Colorado, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Utah, and Michigan. The streamlined pathway is for cases needing minimal court resources and time. This includes uncontested cases and cases that can be resolved early in the life of the case. The National Center for State Courts conducted a study and issued the report in 2018 that found that most cases, over 64% of the cases, were uncontested, and the only court involvement needed for these cases was the court's approval of their agreements. The tailored pathway is for cases needing more court resources and time, but not as much as the complex cases. The goal in this pathway is to provide resources and services that empower parties to problem solve and reach resolution. This involves active case management. This could include, for example, referral to mediation for the parties to resolve their cases where safety and abuse is not a factor. The third pathway is the judicial or specialized pathway. This is designed for cases that require substantial court and/or community services and resources. These are your cases with high conflict or domestic violence or other issues that are affecting the family. The Family Law Task Force submitted our final report in March, as I indicated. You will find that report up on this website that I've posted. Most importantly, the last recommendation is that the Family Law Task Force be allowed to implement through use of other resources within the community and the courts and other organizations to implement all of these 19 recommendations. We plan to use pilot case management processes to learn from those, and also for in the area of triage. And we hope to be able to learn from those pilot projects. If you have any questions, Leslie Dunn and myself are happy to answer any of your questions here today or anytime after this presentation. I would like to give a shout out to any of the Family Law Task Force members that are here for your invaluable work and expertise in helping us develop these recommendations. And I'd like to thank the Supreme Court for their vision and support as we move forward with innovations that will best serve those involved in domestic relations cases. Thank you, and then I'll turn it over to Steve Badger, and he'll talk to you about the work of the Civil Litigation Task Force.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to honor to be with you today and with those of you online. I think all of this really points up, we're very fortunate in the state to have a visionary court like we do, who's very, very active and leading this effort on innovation. I think that's a real tribute and a real benefit to all of us. And I'm going to be presenting today an idea for pathways in civil litigation. We use some of the same terminology, but it's very different from what Judge Tavitas presented in terms of family law cases, because it's obviously different kinds of cases and different needs. So in January of this year, the Supreme Court appointed a Civil Litigation Task Force to carry on the innovation initiative work in the area of civil litigation. We've got a really good group of 13 lawyers and judges with diverse litigation background and practice. Many years of experience is reflected in this group. Our work is ongoing, so I'm a little envious of Judge Tavitas. They've made their final report. Our final report's due at the end of the year. In addition to these task force members you see here, Bob Rath and Amanda Wishen have been integral to our work, and really appreciate their support and all their work on the task force. I would add too that since our work is not done, I'm speaking only for myself here today, not for the task force. So our charge is up here on the slide. This comes right out of the order that I referenced at the beginning. Again, we're to submit our report with recommendations to the court by the end of the year. And we would also anticipate that any significant changes would be subject to a pilot, similar to what the court did with the commercial courts, which was very successful. The order specifically references call to action. That's here at the second to last line, which is an outstanding report that I highly recommend you to your reading. Reflects a culmination of a lot of work done by the Conference of Chief Justices and other groups, including the National Center for State Courts. A lot of what I'm presenting to you is part of a national movement, and that we benefit from the fact that some states have already implemented some of these concepts and ideas. Other states have not. We're kind of in the middle of the pack, maybe a little bit towards the front. But I think that we can learn from what other states have done. So what's driving this need for improvement? There's several things that really kind of converged. Number one, there was 5-6 years ago a very detailed report of civil litigation in state courts nationally. It was a national survey that showed really a predominance of cases and a change in the landscape, the types of cases that come in front of state courts from the last time they'd done a survey like this was in the early 90s. Major shift, a lot of contract cases, a lot of undisputed cases, really very different from what had been experienced before. So that was sort of eye-opening in terms of what are the kinds of cases that are in front of our state trial courts. Secondly, again, data showing litigant dissatisfaction with the costs and delays of civil litigation. And thirdly, technology. Improvements of technology have really laid the groundwork for improvements in case management and for courts to take a stronger role in monitoring deadlines and making sure cases get processed on a timely basis. So let's not make a federal case out of this, the state court cases. I just took a couple of the data points out of that national survey. I'll just, 4% of cases were disposed by bench or jury trial, summary judgment, or binding arbitration. So very few cases are actually going through to get a judicial determination of the result. And the rest are, a lot of defaults, settlements, things like that are how the vast majority of cases are being disposed. So, the question really is, given the very different kinds of cases that our state courts see, most states we follow the federal model of civil procedure. So does that really make sense given what the landscape of cases that state courts see? And I think the answer to that's pretty self-evident. So one of the first recommendations of the call to action is that courts should use a mandatory pathway assignment system to achieve right-sized case management. Again, this is something that had been developed over many years and many years of research and had been developed. A National Center on State Courts was a leader in that effort. So what's that look like? First of all, we did do a survey this summer. Hopefully many of you saw that and were able to respond to that. It did go to state bar members. And a lot of people say lawyers are disagreeable a lot, but we were pleased to see that there was pretty good consensus here supporting this kind of approach, assigning cases at time of filing into pathways based on complexity and case type. You see 59% either strongly or agree compared to 16% who disagree. So this is the general construct. Again, mandatory case assignment up front at the time of filing. Really, the concept here is to go beyond. It's not really, the research shows that amount in controversy is sort of a poor predictor of how much judicial involvement is going to be required in a case. So this is looking at more substantive things in terms of making case assignment, looking at complexity of the legal issues. So that's really an important point here and something that's different about this. So the first pathway is a streamlined pathway. This would be, most cases in state court would fall into this pathway. It's a simplified, streamlined process. Cases with uncomplicated facts and legal issues that require minimal judicial intervention. That's the judge's time. The judge doesn't have to make many decisions in these kinds of cases, but close court supervision. So again, that's the use of technology to monitor deadlines, having court staff who are monitoring the cases more actively. And part of the idea too is to have a simpler and fairer process for people who are the self-represented litigants who state courts are seeing far more frequently than they had in decades past. So some of the case pathway, a streamlined pathway case characteristics: limited number of parties, routine issues, few anticipated motions. Think about that. In the state courts, the cases are predominantly debt collection of various forms where matters are not contested. Why are those matters end up in state court more than, that's basically a function of the fact that state courts have a monopoly in enforcing judgments. So creditors go to state courts to enforce their rights. This would also include some limited need for discovery. So discovery limits coupled with some mandatory disclosures to really try to make that process more efficient and fair. And then the next level would be the complex pathway for cases that really are going to require more judicial involvement, more substantive motions on substantive legal issues. I mean, I would think most of the people in this room, the cases that you're going to be handling are going to fall into this category, vast majority of times. And part of the idea is if you more efficiently handle the simpler cases, that frees up judicial resources to better manage the complex cases that really require that. There are some of the attributes of the complex pathway. And then finally, the general pathway. I mean, there are going to be, this is kind of the catch-all. So there'll be cases that really don't fall well within streamlined or complex. There would be another tier, another pathway for those kinds of cases. It could be a streamlined pathway case that gets bumped up because of its needs and needs more judicial involvement to resolve. So I know I've thrown a lot at you in a short amount of time, but really do appreciate any feedback or comments. Again, the task force is still working. We're really working diligently to develop a report. This is one aspect of it. I don't have time to present to you everything that we're thinking about, but this is a pretty core aspect. So and it sort of dovetails nicely with what the Family Law Task Force is doing as well, or has done. So thank you very much.
So I'll let you read that quote and then have a couple more slides so that you can write those down or take a photo or whatever you would like to do. And then I'll invite our presenters, including our Chief Innovation Officer, Dr. Fink, to come up, and we're going to just have a conversation about these initiatives and maybe talk a little bit about the technology working group and field any questions. And then we'll move the program along. Sound like a plan? So what were we doing? Sharing with you the work that you are doing along with the other partners. And is this intended in any way, shape, or form to tell you how to practice law? No. This is to give you more options, utilize best practices. And those of you that know me know there are a lot of bad Steve David analogies. I remember practicing law when there were no child support guidelines. There were no guidelines. And you went from county to county and you just never knew what was going to happen. Anybody remember practicing in those days? You don't want to admit you're old. So what we're trying to do is give you that smorgasbord, give you that menu, and let you practice and make those decisions, and to give you as many resources, and to give our trial judges who do the real work all those resources. And hopefully when you need a hearing, you'll be more likely to get that hearing. When you need the court to make tough decisions in your case, they're going to be able to make those tough decisions more efficiently, more effectively, more accurately. So you have an opportunity to help this move forward, to modify, to tweak it, to urge your county to step up and say, hey, we want to try this next. Hey, we want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of this. You know, I used to drive south to the State House. Now I drive north since we moved to Columbus. So I'm about 4 miles from where I grew up, 4 miles from the property my father and mother bought with his World War II bonus. And about, more importantly, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 miles from where Johnny Cougar grew up. And so coming up north every once in a while, for whatever reason, I listen to Johnny Cougar, John Cougar Mellencamp, John Mellencamp. If you've ever heard of him, And he's got many songs. Some you may like, some you may not like. That's okay. But he's got one that has the lyrics, if you're not part of the future, then get out of the way. That's not your state bar association. Hopefully you understand that's not your Indiana Supreme Court or your Indiana Court of Appeals or your Indiana Judiciary. It's a little bit different. It's please be a part of the future and step up and help us make that future come true. So that's our quote. This is a way you can participate and urge your colleagues who are not here today, virtually or live, to participate. And that is go online and take this 5-minute survey. Reach out and touch Bob Rath today. We're going to make it really easy for you. There's his email and his telephone number. I wouldn't try Steve's number because I think he's got it routed through some out of the country third party, but that's okay. I'm just kidding. That's my contact information. That's my cell phone. You know that. Use it. Today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. That's the information we want to provide to you. And now we want to have a little open forum. So Steve, Beth, Sir Robert, this is hard to do since we have this camera, and I've already failed because I distinctly remember Bob saying, okay, after we go up there, we'll all sit down. And I was standing there, but you know, as an old soldier, at least I can stand for a little while longer. So one of you step up. Questions. We have 2 hours for this.
Questions, comments.
Let's do feedback. Come on. And for everybody, use the microphone, step up, identify yourself. Who are you?
Thank you, Justice, Your Honors, Bob, Steve. I'm Leslie Hendersall. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I brought myself up here because I wanted the practitioners and members of the bar to know a couple of things, which I hope will encourage your participation and your question asking. The first thing is that as you go back to your bars, may I turn myself this way for just a moment, Your Honors, rudely putting my back to you?
Yeah, if you could do a backflip.
Well, Chantre can do that, but I probably can't. As you take the information that we discussed at the House of Delegates back to your bars and your local members, a couple of things that I wanted you to know, because this innovation initiative is not the Supreme Court imposing what the court thinks we ought to do. The Supreme Court, by forming the task force, of course, as you heard, invited a variety of entities and disciplines to the table to talk about the reform and the innovation initiatives that have now been reduced to writing. And I know in the family law task force that came from not only lawyers, but psychologists, psychiatrists, and a variety of people who may or may not be lawyers, but deal with people participating in whatever area of law we were reforming. And one of the bases for doing that was, frankly, Indiana was losing opportunities for significant economic growth and development. And big business felt like, although Indiana was an otherwise very appealing location, we simply processed complaints and disputes far too slowly. So we were losing growth. And the question was, what can we do about it? And then secondly, one of the benefits that we as a bar association get the opportunity to participate in is a number of conferences across the nation where we learn from other bars. And one of the things that we learned from those bars was that not all states are like Indiana. And it is not unusual for the Supreme Court to impose mandatory requirements and reforms on the lawyers of the state. Justice David just alluded to get on board or get out of the way. And we've been invited on board. We were able to give meaningful input. And so I want to really encourage you, when you go back to your counties and work among your local bars, to share that with your members, because we do want to be part of this. These groups have spent a great deal of time putting this together. And the more that the lawyers can do to participate and support the initiatives, you know, we're pretty good at going through contracts and agreements and figuring out what's wrong. But the more that we can embrace it and move forward, the more Indiana as a whole is going to be successful. So that's just the point that I wanted to make, and hopefully that will spark some of you to ask more questions, give whatever feedback you'd like to give this morning. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honors, Justice. Bob, Leslie, you were killer imposers of the work that was done. So thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, ma'am. If you have any spare time, maybe you should get involved in the State Bar Association. I think we could use your input. Any other questions or comments? We don't want to just stand up here and if it's not necessary. I do want to recognize Kendra Key. Kendra, raise. When are the iClio applications due, Kendra? Recruit an iClio, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of successful law school graduates. Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Michael Tolbert from Lake County, Indiana. A lot of times when we talk about innovation, one of the things that I think lawyers are afraid to talk about is what we lose when we innovate. And one of the things that constantly comes up is the loss of civility. And I will be interested in knowing what this group's thoughts are about, you know, innovation and how do we maintain civility when we kind of reinvent ourselves. You know, email is an invention that's innovative. Zoom meetings are very innovative. You're starting to see more courts go to them. I just had a Zoom hearing where a lawyer had on a baseball cap and shorts. So I'm just interested in opening up that dialogue in terms of how do we continue to maintain some of our traditional values while at the same time innovate. Thank you.
A great question. Comments? Anything?
I'll step in. Thank you for a great question. And I think we want you all to read the reports. My report is available. Please read it, look at it. We did have members of the bar serve on the committee, and hopefully we took into consideration what their concerns were. I don't think anybody loses anything, and I hope that having case management and having triage, which were the two recommendations I talked about today, I think will help towards civility, because we know that delays, incivility causes delays. Playing games causes delays, and that's not in the best interest of those that we serve. And so we're hopeful that these are tools that the courts can use to lead the cases through resolution without lawyers losing anything. If you have clients that feel better about the process, I think you win. And I think everyone wins.
Gentlemen?
Thank you for that question, President Tolbert. I would say that on the technological aspect that you described, which is are people being less formal in what has traditionally been a very formal setting. One aspect of that is I wonder if it would be helpful for reminders, for nudges to be offered to court participants, whether it's well in advance, a day in advance or moments in advance of joining a hearing, that you're joining a hearing, and not just attorneys, but self-represented litigants as well, and witnesses and others, that you're in court, and even though it's a virtual court, there is a procedure and expectations and norms, and here is what they are. I wonder if now those are available. I know on the Supreme Court's website, on the Judicial Branch website, there are best practices for participating in remote hearings. A lot of courts have those, but I wonder if reminders, nudges in advance of the hearings or would be helpful for that specific example, because it is court. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, I agree. It is a really important subject. So thank you for raising it. I just echo sort of what Judge Tavidas' very thoughtful answer, that in the civil litigation context anyway, been doing it for almost 30 years, that a lot of the incivility shows up in discovery. It's the discovery disputes, it's the depositions, it's that. And again, to Judge Tavidas' point, if you can get judicial involved, if you can resolve those issues sooner, more efficiently, so they don't fester, I think that will, that's one thing can be done to improve civility, I think, or at least to lay the groundwork for improved civility.
I think I have a visceral response. So I'll just respond as Steve David and not as a member of the Indiana Supreme Court. Don't do that. And you dress appropriately, you act appropriately, and you do everything you possibly can to ensure that your clients and your witnesses dress appropriately, act appropriately. When I was a trial court judge, occasionally the attorney would say, Judge, so-and-so is coming straight from work and he has some paint on his pants. I said, fine, not a problem, not a problem. So maybe there needs to be some additional guidance. I'm shocked. Early pandemic, we were all flailing, right? To keep the process moving, bobbing and weaving, no playbook, but we should be better than that by now. So help us. But it's an opportunity for those of you to set the standard, be the models, not contribute to that. And it gets back to AR 14, right? What are your suggestions? Do we need some rules or some best practices for those virtual hearings? Not just what are the best hearings for virtual participation? And how do you as lawyers advocate to the trial judge, this is something we need to do live, or this is something we want to do live. No, this is something we can do virtual. Nobody wants to do live, no offense. You can save my client time and money if they can go out to the parking lot and sit in their car and have this hearing. But yes, I will do my best to make sure they're not eating pizza, or that you're not viewing from the bottom of the nose up, or there's not this extraneous. So thank you for those comments, that question, that concern. Help us. You know, we're better. The five of us are much better because of you. We hope that you're a little bit better because of the five of us. That's why we're trying to do this. That's why I apparently failed as a lawyer and failed as a trial judge. So put me someplace where they could surround me with people. So now we're surrounded, the five of us, with you. So help us. What else? We'll try to give a virtual answer.
Can I just speak in this way? Okay.
Steve?
So the question is, for counties that only have one or two judges, how would these initiatives interact with criminal law / jury trials? Oftentimes there is very little availability on the court calendar, depending on what is going on with jury trials.
Well, one thing is, jury trials are important. That's constitutional right. We have to preserve that right, and any reform efforts, that's key. So, there's so many demands put on our courts day to day, and You know, if I think though, if cases are more efficiently managed, including, you know, through devoted court staff and technology, I mean, really technology is kind of a game changer, I think. And we've laid the groundwork with that with Odyssey in 92 counties. So, I mean, it's a fair point, but again, I think that's part of what that problem's there now. I don't see what we're doing is going to make it worse. I think it's going to make it better. So.
Any other comments on that? If it doesn't make it better, we don't want to do it, right? I thought I was a pretty good trial judge in Little Boone County, but probably I wasn't very good. But I had everything. And so early on and maybe late on, it seemed like I was sort of the tennis ball. Like, we've got to have this jury trial. Okay, well, we got to have this final hearing. Okay, we've got to have this emergency detention hearing. Okay. So I think I would have welcomed any suggestions, any ideas, any processes, any procedures, any additional resources that could come my way to help me with the attorneys, allocate time, resources, triage, things of that nature. So that's, again, what we're trying to do. But if it doesn't work, but a lot of work has gone into getting us to this point, and hopefully we can pilot these practices and work through those. But we will be monitoring that, and you will be monitoring that, most importantly, to make sure that we don't misstep. What other comments or concerns? Questions? Is this exciting, interesting? I mean, it's 21st century. Yes, sir.
Skylar Geller from Lake County. I know you mentioned that for the civil litigation cases that it was going to be in parallel to the commercial courts. We're fortunate enough to be one of the counties that has a commercial court, but it's voluntary. You know, you could opt out of it. So for the complex cases that are identified as being more complex and needing more resources, are they going to be earmarked to specific judges within a county?
That would not be part of our plan. I don't see the case assignments are going to change, but the pathway in terms of the process may change. But, you know, again, the streamlined cases are those that shouldn't require a lot of judicial involvement. At least that's the goal. So that does free up more judicial resources to devote to the complex cases. But those won't, I don't foresee those being assigned to a particular court. They just continue to be general jurisdiction. But good question.
Any other comments? We have a question or a chat or?
Good morning, Justice David. This is Tracy Cosby. May I be heard?
Go ahead.
All right, thank you, sir. I'm Tracy Cosby from Marion County, but here in my capacity as an ex officio member, as a co-chair of the Articles
Hang
and
on
Bylaws.
just a second. I better not touch that. We can hear you, but just barely.
Okay.
And if necessary, I can hear you, and I'll repeat the question.
Okay. Is that better at all? Does that help, sir?
There you go.
Okay. Just for the record, Tracy Cosby from Marion County, here in my ex officio capacity as co-chair of the Articles and Bylaws Committee. Specifically looking at the recommendations.
On the Ohio River there.
You know, I wish. I'm not. This is my mental state of being on a beach somewhere as opposed to sitting in an office.
Are you the same Tracy Cosby that clerk for the wonderful Robert Rucker?
Yes, sir. I am proud to say that I absolutely am. Had the honor of being with the Indiana Supreme Court. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
All right. So with regards to the recommendations for the Family Law Task Force, thinking about how these recommendations came in specifically with the different states that were considered, different states not only have their own practices, but in particular their own demographics and cultures. And I'm not talking about ethnic cultures, but I'm talking about behaviors. I'm talking about the way that the individuals in the various communities engage and the resources that those different communities have. Could you speak just a little little bit on when these recommendations were put together, what considerations were given to the differences in those demographics and communities as they relate to Indiana, and then sort of as a follow-up to that, how you would recommend, or if there has been specific thought, or if there will be further guidance on how the individual communities and counties within Indiana would adopt these various recommendations, given the differences in those counties and those resources, and maybe even how those particular counties already function.
Thank you, Tracy. That's an excellent question. And we anticipated questions like this, and that's why we had our family law task members from all over the state. So we had, and judges from smaller counties to larger counties, because we recognize that every court and every practice in different jurisdictions is different. We also recognize that the goal is not to mandate procedures, but to provide tools for judges to use to help manage cases. And it will look differently. A case management plan or a triage plan may look different in a smaller county as opposed to a larger county. And we recognize that. And that is why we have collected data from all over the United States of different jurisdictions in different ways. So when we go into the implementation phase of the 19 recommendations, we will be identifying different ways, different tools that different jurisdictions can utilize to help move the cases through a case management plan into triage cases. So excellent question. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a factor in the for the civil litigation task force as well. And I think our group also includes folks from around the state who are familiar with local practices and local needs. And again, there's sort of always this push-pull between some uniformity and efficiency, but also recognizing that things do need to be tweaked. And so a lot of what we're doing is, what we're working towards is providing, for example, some templates and like discovery protocols, things like that, that could be tweaked, or that's easier to tweak and change for an individual case than if it's like a rule change. So that has informed some of our thinking.
All right, Tracy. Any other virtual questions or live in person questions? And I failed to mention the star of the conversation on race and racism, Anka Henshaw, who took a leap of faith and said, sure, what are we going to do? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Justice David. Leslie Hendersaw again. I have an anonymous question. Won't the use of these resources potentially take away business from lawyers?
I don't believe that's the case. That it's already happening. I mean, we're seeing, the courts are seeing an avalanche really of self-represented litigants because, the process has just become too expensive, frankly. I think that if you have a process that's more efficient, streamlined, that it becomes, cases become more affordable to have a lawyer. If it's, you don't have to do, 15 depositions and all this discovery. If it's a more streamlined process, it's right-sized case management offers that benefit, because then somebody can afford to have a lawyer. There's fewer hoops to jump through and so forth. So I think it's good. I think it'll be good for us in terms of business if you're worried about that. But that's my response. It's a very good question, and I appreciate it being asked.
Sure.
Thank you, Leslie. That is an excellent question. The way I look at it, 64% of family law cases throughout the nation, you have self-represented litigants. So we already know that. And as a practicing lawyer, I don't think you ever run out of things to do. It's just, we're getting cases resolved quicker so you can get on to your next case. So I don't see how it impacts. There's always going to be enough work for lawyers and judges. It's just using your time more efficiently and getting the case resolved more efficiently and having clients that are happier with the process and hopefully the outcome. And also I will mention that the second pathway talks about empowering parties, but that's also empowering lawyers to use ways of negotiating using ADR. Lawyers are to be advisors as well. And so there's maybe hopefully more time that lawyers are spending their time with their clients rather than having them in court or at depositions. So I think it all works out. We get things, for me, I'm on the Court of Appeals, we get our work done very quickly. As soon as I get one case done, I've got a lot of other ones. It's just the way it is. We're always busy. So I don't see it affecting. And if anyone thinks that it does, please let us know. We would be happy to hear how this affects you, but I don't think it will.
Nothing to add. You know, this is not your only opportunity. And I don't have access to the PowerPoint. So we'll flash that back up. The contact information, this is a work in progress. And you have an opportunity, again, to contribute, modify, get involved in this. So we urge you to do that. Any other comments, anonymous or otherwise, virtual or live?
Hi, I have two questions, if I may.
And where are you broadcasting from, Donna?
I'm broadcasting from home with my Colts gallery behind me. What?
What county is that?
Boone.
Boone County, okay.
Two questions. The first is, when I first heard the let's get people to family law cases done in 4 months, I was horrified. Now remember, I look only through my little individual lens because I can't get business valuations done. I can't get custody evaluations done, getting medical records, school records, et cetera. The process of the outside resources that I use would, I mean, I tell my clients 6 to 9 months typically. But then I was reminded by someone else who's in the group that I sort of specialize, let's not use that word, but in high asset and high conflict. So I heard the civil side say that they assume the ones with lawyers will be the slower track. If that was said on the family law task force, I missed it. Is there going to be a mechanism? I mean, I think most people that know me know when Donna Bay shows up, it's not a 60-day divorce, but I don't want to be as presumptuous as that sounds.
I say that because we've known each other a long time, so. You know, good friend. Beth, Judge, you want to?
Hi, Donna.
Hi.
Very good question. And the third pathway that really is meant for those cases that need other resources like a business evaluation or a guardian ad litem is involved and you need a report. So the 365 days goal of having 98% of the cases resolved, we understand that that's a guideline for judges to use. Really, as a trial court judge that did primarily family law matters for 12 years, I'm very well aware of the things that get in the way of cases being resolved within a time period. But a lot of times that's just delays caused by continuances that are not necessary. Or game playing. But if you have a high conflict case, think about the fact that the sooner you get that high conflict case resolved, really the better for the families and for those parties. And so it's taking away, for example, your, as a lawyer trying to advise your clients, you know, we have these case management, you have the ability to say, we have these case management standards and this is what the court expects, and the courts not going to allow me a continuance unless there's a very good reason to have a continuance. We also have a statute for, well, several statutes in family law matters that require courts to advance certain things on their calendar. For example, your provisional hearing should be set within 21 days of filing a petition for dissolution of marriage. Modification of custody cases need to be advanced on the court's calendar. So we already have some of that guidance from the legislature that certain matters deserve to be moved up. So don't worry about it, Donna. Your cases will probably fall in the specialized case plan triage pathway that requires more resources and more time. But we know that 64% of uncontested cases could, if we dealt with those in a streamlined way, we can get justice and resolution for those cases, which gives the court more time for the specialized cases. So it's all three of the pathways work together to achieve the purpose of getting the justice and the time that is required for the cases, and basically not treating every case as one size fits all. Does that answer your question?
It does. My second question, and maybe it's in the report, I have not read it. It has to do with my experience with client emotional processing, that their marriage is ending. And once again, I was focusing on that 4 months. I find that there's sort of a sweet point when people are ready to face the reality, and you can settle things a whole lot easier. Whereas if you push it beforehand, you might not be able to settle, and it might push you into trial work. I'm guessing that your committee took that into account, because I saw you had psychologists on board. Could you speak to that concern for just a second?
Yes, and that's a very good question. I would always say to people, I'm not in the business of divorcing people as quickly as I can, because I agree with you that sometimes you need the delay. When we're talking about streamlined cases, we're talking about cases where the people are ready to go forward. And they have their agreements, and we just need to get them before a court to have that approved. And then the other aspect of what you're saying is that people are not ready emotionally to go forward. That's something that you would need to tell your judge in whatever county. And I'm certain that the goal is not, like I said, the goal is not to divorce people as quickly as possible. The goal is to bring justice to the case as quickly as is in the best interest of your litigants and the families. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great questions.
Absolutely, Donna. No one intends to make you put a round peg in a square hole or anything like that. This is to assist the trial judge, assist you in making sure that we can allocate adequate resources where they need to be. And no one wants to throw a grenade in the middle of what you do, particularly you. We just want to help and make sure that the flip side doesn't happen. The high conflict, complex case never gets to trial, and the ready to go, emotionally ready, have an agreement, can't get the one issue decided in court and hold up the divorce that everybody wants to get over and decide this one issue with an hour of hearing for over 12 months or something like that. So it's all very important, and we'll work through this together. Anything else that you have? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, there are a couple of virtual questions.
Sure.
What are the thoughts of the judges regarding mandatory mediation at the trial level and then at the appellate stage?
Well, we've got what, 630 different judicial officers. And we have a couple judges up here. Go ahead, Judge. Do you have any thoughts you want to share?
I think every judge is going to do what he or she feels is best for their jurisdiction and their court. So I guess I don't really have a view as to mandatory mediation. I don't think that's going to be something that the Family Law Task Force is recommending. I see mediation as a tool to assist parties to get a resolution without having to go to court. I was not a trial court judge that used mandatory mediation, so I can't speak on behalf of the success of that or the pros and cons of that. Unless there's anything more specific that I could answer.
I'm not a judge, but I'm happy to give you, some input on that. It has come up in our discussions of the task force in terms of the mediation and mandatory mediation. And it's been the source of some spirited debate. I mean, there's concern that if you have mediation, if it's just mandated in all cases, it just becomes a roadblock, right? Matters are undisputed or there's contract clear, why do I have to go through? It's just running up the cost, which is a legitimate point. But on the other hand, I mean, not necessarily mandatory mediation, but mediation in general, there's a very strong body of research that shows that in terms of the participants in that dispute, their satisfaction levels are highest with matters that are mediated, that go to a resolution through mediation. I think there's several reasons for that. It's a voluntary process, they have control, but they're high satisfaction with the process. And so I think the more that we can do to make mediation available on a voluntary basis, thinking and trying strategies to encourage, low or no cost mediation, use of online dispute resolution, and Bob can answer a lot of questions about that because we're running a pilot right now. That I think that's where we can make strides forward.
I've really nothing to add. Just philosophically, I was a trial judge, discretion, and listen to lawyers and make decisions when they have difference of opinions. So we'll navigate that, but certainly there's no anticipation of one size fits all. Bob?
Steve mentioned online dispute resolution, which the technology working group recommended for small claims cases, and the Family Law Task Force recommended for family law cases. And nationally, there's been some examples of ODR that have had positive results for some of the reasons that Steve mentioned, but sometimes just getting the parties together in advance of the hearing can resolve some or all of the open issues. One of the differences that Indiana is going to take, at least for the small claims, is to configure the ODR systems for proceeding supplemental. So in the small claims, after the judgment has been issued and it's a matter of working out a payment plan, a lot of those times you really don't need to go to court. And if the parties can come together online, not necessarily at the same time, they can go through a chat process when each side is available. Attorneys can participate, self-represented litigants, and hopefully that could be a way to resolve the disputes during proceeding supplemental and free up the judicial time, the judicial resources to focus on those hearings that are needed. And so that was the recommendation from the technology working group focusing on small claims, and those pilots are just getting started now in Lake and Allen counties, and 2 other counties will follow. And the Family Law Task Force made a similar recommendation that will come soon for domestic relations cases.
Very good. I think our time is about up. This is not the end of the conversation. Thank you, Judge, for another anonymous question. Come forward, please. Maybe you shouldn't be so involved in the State Bar Association.
Thank you, Judge.
Last question.
My watch indicates at least 30 more seconds.
Okay.
How do we, as practitioners, know that the judges in our particular counties have been educated on the initiatives? And should we, as practitioners, expect to include the initiatives when we make our arguments to the court, just like we would case law or trial rules?
I'm going to go hike Mount Kilimanjaro in January of 2023, and I'm starting to learn a little bit of Tanzanian, and the most important phrase is pole pole, which translates into slowly, slowly, to be able to make it up the mountain. So certainly don't hesitate to have conversations with your local judges, like, have you heard, have you read? I'm going to read it. Do you want to read it? But this is going to take time, and we're going to implement pilots. And so it's not going to happen overnight, and it may not happen exactly in the format that it's been presented to the 5 of us. That's why we're sharing this with you. Don't be afraid of this. You don't even have to embrace it. Be open to it and ask those questions. Well, this sounds great, but what about? Like Donna did, and many of you have, and we'll work through this. We'll work through this. If this is not good, we won't do it. But a lot of work, a lot of research by really good people who do this every day are suggesting, hey, we need to look at this. We can do a little bit better. And places where we do really good, really well, we don't have to change. So, but have those conversations. Not everybody in your county may have read the preliminary reports, but they may want to get involved, and you may want to get them involved, right? So never underestimate your power, your influence. Any parting comments?
If I could just add on to what you indicated, we spoke to many judges throughout the country about these principles of change and innovation. And I think we all should be excited that we get to all be a part of innovating for making things better in the family law sphere. I'm excited to have this opportunity. I was excited to have the expertise of all the members of the Family Law Task Force. And I think that if we do this all together, you'll understand that there's a lot of research behind all of these recommendations. And we're going to try things and see if it works for Indiana. I'm very confident that it will. And thank you all for all of your great questions.
Thank you, Bob, Leslie, for your leadership. Thank you, Judge, for your leadership. Thank you, Steve, for your leadership. Mr. Chair, there you are. We turn it back over to you. Thank you all for indulging us, and I hope this is helpful to you.
Thank you very much. And for those that are online, I think I saw a comment, but just in case you didn't see that, if you have any additional questions, there are ways to make sure that those will get forwarded to the appropriate people and get answered. Justice David, Judge Tavitas, Steve Badger, Mr. Rath, Ms. Dunn, thank you for leading this engaging conversation. I can say on behalf of the ISBA, we truly appreciate your efforts in allowing us to be part of the conversation. So thank you again for your efforts. I'd now like to invite the Honorable Tim Baker to the podium to share the Nominations Committee report. Judge Baker.
Well, I'll now share with you the shortest report of the morning, but its brevity should not mask its significance. The Indiana State Bar Association House of Delegates Nomination Committee met on May 17th of this year to select the chair-elect for the House of Delegates. I chaired that committee, which consisted of committee members Sarah McClammer, Andy Metzel, Jimmy McMillan, and Tanya Bond. This year's selection must be from Area 4, which is Marion County. The committee considered a diverse array of candidates. Some were nominated by the committee, others were nominated by ISBA leadership and its staff. Other candidates were self-nominated. Other candidates had been considered for the position in the past. In addition, the ISBA promoted the opening in the addendum. Based upon its consideration and discussion of all the candidates, the nominating committee unanimously recommends Anka E. Henshaw of the Marion County Public Defender Agency for the position of chair-elect of the House of Delegates. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Baker. Do I have a motion to accept the committee's recommendations? Do I have a second? Is there any discussion? Is there any online discussion? All in favor of approving the committee's recommendation, please say aye if you are attending in person. Any opposed? Virtual delegates, please vote via the poll that now appears on your screen. And we'll wait just for a moment for those results. We have approval. The motion does pass. Congratulations, Anka. We look forward to your continued involvement with our association. Now we're on to old business. Is there any old business to come before the House? Any old business? Hearing none. Is there any new business to come before the House? Hearing none. Is my final act of the House Delegates Chair, I'd like to invite incoming Chair Judge Holly Harvey to join me at the podium. So you know, Judge Harvey was elected by the House of Delegates last year to follow me as chair. Judge, I am certain that you will do wonderful things in this role. At this time, I'd like to pass you the gavel and congratulations.
That's up just a little bit. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Jositis. I look forward to serving the House in the coming year. Thank you all for volunteering your time to attend the meeting and provide your perspectives on the future of Indiana's legal system. I'd like to thank LexisNexis and the Indiana Bar Foundation for partnering on this year's annual summit. It wouldn't be possible without the financial support of our partners, so thank you. As a reminder, just a little bit of business, we have some section meetings taking place next over the noon hour. For the rest of us, lunch is on our own. We'll see everyone back here for the membership assembly meeting at 1:30, and we will hear then from President Tolbert and incoming President Clayton Miller. This meeting is adjourned.